my name's Jade and today I'm going to be discussing all the books that I read in March. March was an interesting month. I didn't read as much as I normally read. I wasn't very active on Instagram. I barely posted anything. I didn't edit any videos. Didn't film any videos either. I didn't write anything for my book. Well, I did, but not a lot compared to the speed I was at before. March feels a bit like a failure. Like I didn't do any of these things, but I did get a job. Like a real adult job, and I went on a trip at the end of the month. So in my defense, you know, to be fair, another reason why I haven't edited anything is because the next video that was due to come out was the House of Sky and Breath video, and it turns out I have over an hour's worth of footage for it, and I'm scared, so I've been putting it off. Anyway, I read 5 books in March, one of them being a graphic novel, one of them being non-fiction, and 3 of them being novels. Let's just get into it, shall we? The first book I finished was Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. I listened to the audiobook of this, which is narrated by Hazel, and the audiobook actually isn't this edition, it's the American edition. There's like bonus content in it. These are published by 2 different publishers, and so they're slightly different versions, and so I had to have both of them. I really loved a lot of the passages that were in the bonus version that weren't in the original version. Like I'd be reading along to the book at the same time as listening to it, and she'd be saying things that weren't here, so I had to get this one, and I tabbed them and underlined it. But I have to keep this version still because I prefer this cover to this cover. I think this cover is really beautiful, and I'm really kicking myself that I didn't splurge and get the hardcover edition, and I might just still do that someday because I really loved this. I feel like holding 2 is excessive. Like, what? Should I put one of them down? I'm gonna put this one down. It's here. Out of Love is a love story. Well, yeah, it's about the story of a relationship, and it's told backwards. It starts with the breakup and it ends with them first meeting. The idea alone really intrigues me. I really love quirky, weird, interesting stuff like that. I've already read a book, this kind of told backwards, Gem and Fraud by E. Lockhart, which I really liked and I thought had a lot of potential, but I saw what was coming because that one's a thriller. This was very different in that way because it's a love story. There's no like big shocking twists and turns. I mean, there's twists and turns, of course, there are in most good stories, not the same kind of format, I suppose. Almost reminded me a little bit of Sally Rooney. It did feel quite literary in a way, just the way there was such a broad way of themes, and the way it was kind of almost slice of life. Like it didn't feel like a romance. Like I don't know if I'd put it in the romance genre. It kind of is, but it also feels like it belongs in the literary genre. It reminded me a little bit of Queenie. I think it was Candice Carty Williams. Like the kind of themes that were covered and the way we were watching this person's life, it felt very reminiscent of that. And I really liked that aspect. It's told in a series of chapters. It's quite long chapters, and each chapter, in my opinion, almost feels like a short story that you could read by itself without any context and love just as much. Like I remember especially having that feeling after I finished the very first chapter. I was like, well, I could leave here and be satisfied and happy. I think towards the end is when it kind of loosened a bit at the end. I don't think the chapters at the end were as strong in that way. I think the pacing also was a little, I don't think it was off, it just confused me a bit because it felt like there was a really long chunk of time in the first half where we were just like back-to-back incidents of seeing them, and unless they were stretched over more time than I presumed they were, but because they were back-to-back, like it linked directly onto whatever happened before, it feels like there was a big gap of time between that and like when they first met and their first couple dates, because they were quite close together and they were together for like 5 years, and it didn't feel like 5 years. I just wish it was like a little bit more spread out, I think, but that's fine, I can get over it. The writing was really lovely. I really enjoyed reading. I really enjoyed Hazel's narration as well. Let's see what I wrote on my Goodreads because I can't remember the specifics. I remember there was a certain word I used for the writing. Vivid. It was really vivid and it was really grounded, and it all just felt so real. I was totally there with her. Our main character, who is unnamed, which was a really interesting choice for such an intimate book. I went into this so nonchalant, but by the end of the first chapter I knew I'd love it. The writing is grounded and vivid, and the story is full of emotion, covering a range of ideas. For the most part, each chapter could be a short story without any context, and I'm sure I'd still love it. I just really enjoyed myself. I related to the main character a lot. She talks about writing. She's a writer, and I really enjoyed that aspect. Like, I mean, look at all these tabs of all these bits that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed it. I really respected it. For a debut of like an internet person who normally isn't taken very seriously with these things, it's such a masterpiece and a beautiful novel, and I'm so glad that I read it, and I'm very much so looking forward to anything else Hazel writes. 9 out of 10. 2 Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. We're off to a good start. And then next up, I read Seasons of War by Derek Landy. This is book 4 in the new series. It's like book
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Well, I mean, I knew that. 10, 11, 12, 13 as a whole. I can't believe I just counted the first 9 Skullduggery books. Like, there's 9. Seasons of War. Seasons of War I didn't enjoy as much as I enjoyed Bedlam, which is the book that comes before this. Bedlam for me was the first book in the new series that really stood out and was like, okay, I love this. Whereas the first 2 were good, were fun, were fine. Seasons of War I didn't enjoy as much as I enjoyed Bedlam. It's fine. It did almost kind of have a filler book feel. Like, I couldn't understand how this was going to fit into the grand scheme of things as much, and even after reading the one that comes after this, I'm trying to think how it does with like the way things end. I don't think was necessary. Like, it's a fun side adventure, I enjoyed it, but it did have that filler book feel. I mean, it was really important for Valkyrie's personal journey, that I will say. Almost at times like a giant montage training, getting herself back together. But the chapter structure in this one was really different. The chapters were really short and we were just constantly going all over the place, like bouncing around all our different characters who are all doing different things, some of them seemingly of more consequence than others, which was interesting. I thought it would make it go quicker, but I think where it was like so hectic, me bouncing around so much, it could be a little hard to concentrate at times. I don't know. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of the Scholar Pleasant novels. It felt like a filler book and I can't get past that. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. I can't give Skullduggery anything lower than an 8 out of 10. And then these 3 books, I finished all of them at the end of the month, and I remember like the day before I was leaving for my trip, I went to Paris for a week. I'm so close to finishing 3 books and I have to finish them before I leave, and I didn't quite, but then I finished that last one. Very early days of the trip. I think it was the first day I was there. The first one I finished was Olympus by Rachel Smith, which I did start last month, if you recall, if you watched that video. And this is a graphic novel following like Hades and Persephone, that myth, but it's kind of like a modern retelling, but also kind of not. It's a really interesting world that I feel like we've not come fully to grips with yet. The impression that I'm getting thus far is that the humans are still like in ancient times without technology and all that. Because the gods are gods, they have cars and cities and stuff. Like Olympus is a city. Then when we flash to see the humans, I'm pretty sure they were wearing togas and were old-fashioned. Maybe it's modern times. I can't tell yet. It's interesting either way, and I hope that's something that's explored more, just so it feels more grounded. The art is, I mean, you can tell from the cover that the color palette is stunning. It's all really vivid and bright and just beautiful. It's really heavy, so it's really hard to show you. I love the art. And it's an interesting take. It's not like, you know, it doesn't follow the myth exactly. It is one of those retellings where he's not taking her against her own will. Like, things transpire differently. This is the first 25 volumes, chapters, episodes, whatever they are. And I think there's like, I'm getting the feeling it's going to be a long one, which is great. I really loved the pacing. It didn't feel like it was moving too fast or too slow. It felt like it was taking its time and going at the pace it needed to go. It didn't blow my socks off. I wasn't obsessed with it. It was cute. It was easy to read. It was quick. I loved the take on mythology. I loved the art. I'm very much looking forward to reading the next one. Is it my new favourite graphic novel ever though? Probably not. I would give it like a 7 out of 10. And then next up, as you may or may not guess, was Skullduggery Pleasant Dead or Alive, which is the 4th book in the new series, book 14, I think. This is an Old Students Exclusive edition, so it's called Pages. It was exciting because like now I'm pretty much caught up. I have the grimoire, which I'm probably going to read this next month coming, and then the last one. Exciting times, although also horrifying, scary, not good times, especially considering what the title is. I liked this one better than Seasons of War. I don't know if I liked it as much as Bedlam. I don't know if I liked it more than Bedlam. I don't know if I liked it less than Bedlam, but those two were the highlights of this new series so far. The stakes were high. The stakes were really high. And just couldn't for the life of me get a feel for where we were going and what was going to happen. As always, there's like a couple different things happening at once, and you never really know which one is going to be the most important and is going to make the biggest impact. The characters were really great in this one. They were all there. They were all interesting. Certain things happened that I wasn't expecting to happen. I think I might have liked it more than Bedlam, you know, if not definitely as much as I think. Yeah, just the way this ended, I was so scared for the next one. I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10. What did I give Bedlam? Maybe like an 8.5. Does that help? Is that enough distinction to show you that I liked it more than Seasons of War? Yeah, it was good. It was good and worrying, and it almost had like an older Skullduggery feel, like with the stuff that was happening, but like within the present times and the present situation. Yeah, it was good stuff. It was stressful stuff. And then the last book that I finished this month is the non-fiction book that I read, which is The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. Wow, I'm really sucking with names today. I got this like edition secondhand because they don't sell the hardcover in England anymore, and I love it because it's got all of their like full names. That's on the floor now. On the hardcover. So if you couldn't wean, this is the lives of the women that were killed by Jack the Ripper. And Jack the Ripper is barely mentioned. So he wasn't in their lives until the very end. And like the way they were killed, barely if at all mentioned. Like I think it's noted like when they were killed and where they were. You know, we speculate or we know what happened in their last few days. And we see sometimes like the initial aftermath of their death, like how their loved ones reacted, because we also spend time with their loved ones because we're following their lives. I mean, some of it is of course speculation because we can't know what they were thinking. She can only guess what they were thinking. I would wager it's a very educated guess, but I was always taking it with a pinch of salt because I knew that certain things we just don't know. Nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. I listened to this via audiobook as well. The author narrates it herself. She did a few accents, which is really nice. I'm so glad that this book exists. Like the fact that all we know of these women is that they were killed by Jack the Ripper, and so many of them, we are taught that they're prostitutes. I learned at school that they were all prostitutes. That's what they all had in common. That's why he killed them, possibly. That was, you know, the thing that linked them. He didn't like prostitutes was the theory. When I think 2 of them were, and like one of them was like kind of, maybe kind of not, and then only one of them I feel like was like actually out and out like, yes, I am a prostitute, and the rest of them weren't. They were just considered tramps, I think is the word she used a lot, which I don't like that word. Like they moved around a lot, they were homeless, they struggled keeping stable jobs, they had rough stuff happen to them in their lives. I remember reading the first one in particular. Who was it, the first one? Polly. She didn't have much else choice. Like what else was she to do? It was so sad. Like some of them, not that any of them deserve to die. I think there's even a quote in here that like people don't deserve to die for not being upholding citizens, as long as, you know, if they're not breaking any laws, if they're not hurting anyone, they don't deserve to die because they're lessers in society. Some of them had more choices than others, I think is the way I'd say it. But then again, we don't know what their mindset was. We don't know the full extent of their family history. The last one in particular, compared to the rest, the amount of knowledge we had on the rest, we had barely any knowledge. Mary Jane, we a lot of what we know on her is speculation. Is it here that she says the quote? I want to pull it out for you because it's really good. Okay, it's in reference to the Suffolk Strangler. The loss of these 5 lives is clearly a tragedy. You may view with some distaste the lives of those involved. Whatever drugs they took, whatever the work they did, no one is entitled to do these women any harm, let alone kill them. Yeah. I teared up multiple times reading this. We follow them like from little kids to when they're adults, and we only get like 4 chapters on each. It's told really succinctly, and yet I feel like no detail was lacking, and it was just very moving and emotional, and I'm just so glad it exists. I'm so glad we have like a real record of what happened to these women, and they're not just going to be deemed victims by this horrible thing. And the fact that he is so famous, we all know Jack the Ripper, but we know barely anything of his victims. Why are we glorifying this killer? Why don't we know about the victims? They're the ones that had the tragedy done to them. I'm also someone that is interested in Jack the Ripper and has always loved learning about them, and I had no idea that so much what I knew about the victims was so wrong. Highly recommend, if you're at all interested, pick it up. The audiobook is great. 9 out of 10. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, somewhere in about there. It's just because I like didn't have the best time of my life reading it, and I do think there were a couple times where she would say something, or the way she phrased something, it would like, I didn't know how I felt about it. And that is the end. Please let me know how your reading month was in the comments below. I'd love to chat about it. And that is all. If you enjoyed this video, if you could hit the thumbs up and subscribe, that would really help me out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye!